What if the final words of a 70s teen idol could change how you live your life today? David Cassidy's last message wasn't just heartbreaking. It was a wake-up call the world never saw coming. He left behind more than fame, more than music. He left a warning, a truth so raw, it's haunted fans ever since. So what did he say in those final moments? And why is it still making millions cry? With us. You need to hear this before time runs out. Final whisper before he left this world left everyone speechless. David Cassidy, once the face of teenage adoration, the unmistakable voice behind the Partridge Family, spent his last moments in a hospital bed in Florida, as his body quietly surrendered to years of damage. What he said in those final hours would haunt his fans, shock his loved ones, and reveal a truth he'd hidden behind a lifetime of fame. This isn't just the end of a pop icon. It's the unraveling of a life lived in front of millions, and a single line that made everything make sense. In the early 1970s, David Cassidy wasn't just famous. He was the culture. He'd walk into a teen's bedroom without seeing his face plastered on posters, lunchboxes, record stores, television screens. He dominated them all. As Keith Partridge, he brought music, charm, and a polished image into households across the globe. Stadiums overflowed with screaming fans. Radio charts were topped effortlessly. His fan club surpassed even those of Elvis and the Beatles. Cassidy had it all, or so it seemed. But beneath the headlines and hit singles, he was quietly suffocating. He often admitted the pressure wasn't just exhausting, it was soul-crushing. "I was the American dream," he once said. "Inside, I felt like I was drowning." Fans chased him, cameras hunted him, and the price of popularity was paid in privacy. One terrifying moment in London, when a fan was tragically lost in the chaos of a stampede, deepened his disillusion. The fame he once embraced now felt like a cage. Behind the glittering smile and the perfect hair was a young man cracking under the weight of expectation. Cassidy's charm lit up every room, but those close to him saw the shadows behind the laughter. He wanted connection, yet struggled to maintain it. Loneliness lingered even in the loudest rooms. Adored by millions, Cassidy often felt like a stranger in his own life, wearing a mask that fame demanded he never remove. His journey through addiction became an open secret. For years, he tried to quiet the pain with the wrong kind of relief. Interviews became confessionals. Stays became routine. The world watched as he swung between recovery and relapse, each time revealing a little more of the man behind the myth. Cassidy didn't just want to be famous. He wanted to be seen, to be understood, to be whole. There was a time he fought for reinvention. In 1972, he stripped away the teen idol image, literally and figuratively, for a daring Rolling Stone spread and interview. It was a cry for the world to see the artist behind the idol. But no matter what he did, Keith Partridge was the image people clung to. Cassidy once called his fame a prison cell, one lined with gold records and screams from the past. The years took their toll. Financial strain hit hard. His marriages fractured. The spotlight faded. 2015, Cassidy filed for bankruptcy, citing mounting debts and dwindling opportunities. His arrests for driving under the influence made headlines for all the wrong reasons. And one by one, the glossy remnants of his golden boy persona crumbled. Wasn't just out of the limelight. He was now a cautionary tale of how fame can both build and break. By the time 2017 arrived, Cassidy had mostly disappeared from the public eye. But in the background, his health was quietly collapsing. Concert in California that February shocked longtime fans. Cassidy stumbled through lyrics, slurred his words, and looked visibly confused. It was painful to watch. Explanation that followed was even more gut-wrenching. Cassidy revealed he had been diagnosed with dementia, the same illness that took his mother. The public reacted with compassion, many believing that years of confusion, missteps, and substance use had been rooted in a slow-moving disease. But there was a twist no one saw coming. In a documentary filmed just before his passing, one that would remain largely unseen, Cassidy made a quiet confession that sent shockwaves through those who loved him. "I did this to myself," he admitted. "It wasn't dementia, it was alcohol." He had lied, not out of malice, but fear of judgment, fear of pity, fear of facing the consequences of years of self-destruction in the public eye. Confession reframed everything. Cassidy hadn't just been battling illness. he'd been hiding from the truth. A diagnosis that had once drawn sympathy had masked a far more painful reality. Liver disease, organ failure, and years of cumulative damage from alcohol. He was in and out of hospitals, battling fatigue and confusion. His body, once the vessel of a global sensation, was now struggling just to survive. In November 2017, just days before Thanksgiving, Cassidy collapsed at home. Emergency tests confirmed his liver and kidneys were shutting down. A transplant wasn't an option. His body was too far gone. Ones gathered, some for closure, others simply to bear witness to the final days of a life that had once been lived so loudly, so vividly. In those last moments, Cassidy, often sedated but occasionally alert, was described by nurses as gracious, thoughtful, and strangely at peace. His family surrounded him, whispering words of comfort, holding his hand as he drifted between the present and the past. But what no one expected was that Cassidy still had one more thing to say. One final message that would echo far beyond that hospital room. 4 simple words. "I'm proud of you." And time seemed to stop. Spoken not from a stage, but a hospital bed. Those words echoed far beyond the sterile walls where David Cassidy lay fate. It was November 21st, 2017, and in that quiet, clinical setting, Cassidy's final breath wasn't marked by spectacle, but something far more powerful. Love. His daughter, actress Katie Cassidy, revealed them days later in a heartfelt tweet. At first glance, the message seemed small, yet it stirred something deep within millions who had watched Cassidy's highs and lows over the decade. Because sometimes, the smallest phrases carry the weight of an entire life. Just like that, the world began to ask, was this a farewell, a redemption, or both? Next few words, so much wasted time, cut deeper. Those 5 syllables seemed to hold decades of regret. Hands, for family, for Katie. Those words weren't just a goodbye. They were the unraveling of a story Hollywood never finished telling. It was as if the boyish heartthrob from the Partridge Family was finally seen not as a star, but as a flawed, aching human one. Katie, whose own career had bloomed with roles in Arrow and Gossip Girl, didn't share his spotlight growing up. But in that moment, those final words, there was no need for red carpets or scripts. It was real, raw, and it pulled the curtain back on a relationship marked more by distance than connection. Fans clung to Katie's post like a lifeline. "He knew he lost time with me," she wrote, "but I'm grateful for what we had." One follower wrote, "Those words made me call my dad today." Another said, "It felt like he was speaking to all of us." Psychologists say the dying often speak truths they've carried quietly. In Cassidy's case, it wasn't about fame, money, or even music. About a relationship, maybe the only one that still mattered. Those around him say in his last moments, despite years of illness and dependency, he showed clarity. Hospital staff recall his smile as he hummed old hits from his Partridge Family days. There was something hauntingly beautiful about it. A fading man, tethered to life by melody and memory. But his body was failing. His liver had given out. His kidneys were beyond repair. The candid reality was that no miracle was coming. Yet even in this fragile state, Cassidy still held on. Not to a stage, but to the faces of those he loved. One nurse recalled how his eyes lit up when Katie entered the room. He whispered softly. He squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you," he said. He later described it as the most precious thing he'd ever given her. That moment between father and daughter was no longer private. It became something sacred the world was invited to witness. What made that moment unforgettable wasn't just the love, it was what came before it. Silence, the missed birthdays, the emotional distance. That's where the real story lies. In the unspoken years they both survived. Cassidy's life had always danced between adoration and isolation. One minute, he was America's golden boy. The next, he was a headline about addiction, collapse, or broken promises. Yet in his final hour, he found the words that had always escaped him. And that changed everything. When Cassidy died, Katie was 31. Her career was already well underway, shaped not by her father's fame, but her own persistence. Still, the loss hit in unexpected ways. While tributes poured in, Katie stayed quiet, sharing only the words he left her. But those words turned into a compass, guiding her through interviews, scripts, and quiet nights, when the silence returned. In one later interview, she said, "It gave me peace. It helped me understand him in a way I never could when he was alive. And just this April, on what would have been David's 75th birthday, he honored him once more. Displaced by a Pacific Palisades wildfire, her home was chaos. But in the middle of it, she paused, lit a candle, whispered his name. No grand gestures, no interviews, just memory and flame. "I celebrate him quietly," she said in a rare statement. And those 5 words, "I celebrate him quietly," spoke volumes. Because behind every celebrity headline is a private story. Daughter, a father, a missed childhood replaced by one meaningful goodbye. There's something haunting about a child inheriting a legacy built in the spotlight, but shadowed by pain. Katie never needed to say more. She already had. Forgiveness became her armor. Grace became her answer. And in doing so, she reminded fans that the story wasn't just about loss, it was about healing. What if closure isn't about fixing everything, but finding something to hold on to? David Cassidy's legacy is bigger than a pop culture chapter. A map of what happens when fame collides with fragility. Yes, he sang to sold-out crowds. Yes, he broke records and hearts. But at the end, all he wanted was to be remembered as someone who loved. That's what Katie gave him. A second chance to matter, not as a star, but as her father. And that's the real twist in this story. Not the fame, not the downfall, but the redemption found in 8 quiet words. "I'm proud of you." So much wasted time, a whispered benediction that somehow made everything feel whole again. David Cassidy once stood at the pinnacle of pop culture. A teen idol whose voice defined a generation. In his final hours, the spotlight dimmed, revealing a haunting vulnerability behind the charm. The man who sang of love and dreams was, in the end, yearning for connection, for something real beyond the applause. "I tried to make amends where I could," he confessed late in life. Those weren't just words. They were cracks in the glittering surface of fame, revealing the pain of years lost to illusion. One phrase he uttered as life slipped away. So much wasted time, cut deeper than any song lyric he ever delivered. It wasn't just his own sorrow. It was a mirror reflecting our own silent delays, regrets, and missed moments. As his daughter clung to the words, "I'm proud of you," the world listened closely, feeling the weight of what wasn't said as much as what was. Cassidy's end wasn't the crescendo of a concert. It was a quiet whisper of truth, reminding us that the applause eventually fades, but the echoes of our choices never stop reverberating. His fame had once seemed limitless, but behind the posters and platinum records was a man battling the silent erosion of time. Do we lose when we trade authenticity for adoration? Cassidy's life asked that question, and his final moments delivered a bittersweet answer. He had lived in the glare of constant attention, but his battles with addiction and loneliness showed just how dim fame could become in the absence of true connection. He admitted in rare interviews that the love from fans often couldn't replace the intimacy he craved. He wasn't just telling his story, he was warning us all. His words resonated like a final performance no one expected, and one that left the audience frozen in reflection. As one fan put it online, "He sang to us, but in the end, he spoke for us." And what a life it was. Cassidy once ruled the charts and screens, earning millions from music, television, and global tours. Real estate holdings spanned from a lavish Fort Lauderdale mansion, complete with waterfront views and private yacht access, to a stunning Las Vegas residence where his career found a second act. His car collection reflected a taste for speed and style, featuring a classic 1968 Mustang GT, a Bentley Continental GT, and even a vintage Ferrari 308. Known for his love of precision, Cassidy wore high-end timepieces like Rolex and Patek Philippe, each representing a moment of hard-won triumph. At the height of his career, he traveled in private Gulfstream jets, jetting between concert venues, business meetings, and media appearances. Beyond the glitz, Cassidy ventured into horse breeding and owned stakes in entertainment companies and memorabilia licensing. His entrepreneurial ventures reflected a keen instinct for branding and longevity. He maintained several comprehensive insurance policies, safeguarding his vocal cords, another covering high-value assets like his homes and art collection. Cassidy's financial decisions were at times bold, but they reveal a powerful lesson. Diversification is survival. His spending habits fluctuated, but he often reinvested in passions that also protected his future. And for younger fans watching his rise and fall, Cassidy's career remains a powerful blueprint. Build wealth not just for status, but for sustenance, because fame fades, but smart strategy endures. As Cassidy's story closed its final chapter, the world wasn't left with a dramatic scandal, but with something far more affecting: truth. He gave us a parting gift not wrapped in glamour, but in raw, emotional clarity. The phrase, "so much wasted time," has since echoed through social media, podcasts, and even therapy rooms. People from all walks of life began reevaluating their choices. A daughter finally called her estranged father. A teacher pursued the writing dream they'd shelved for decades. A nurse mustered the courage to forgive her sister. Cassidy's legacy was no longer about albums or autographs. It became about unlocking courage. The most chilling part? He didn't mean to become a prophet of regret. He simply spoke his truth, yet somehow that truth sparked a movement. His fans didn't just mourn, they transformed, and in doing so, they honored him in the most powerful way possible: by living differently. It wasn't supposed to end this way. Cassidy had dreamed of returning to the stage, of reinventing himself one last time, but life had other plans. His passing on November 21st, 2017, didn't come with a grand finale. It came in the quiet of a hospital room, where fame had no place and only love remained. That stillness spoke louder than decades of applause. His last performance wasn't captured in front of an audience, but it was heard by millions. "I'm proud of you. So much wasted time." These were the lyrics to his real story. Cassidy's voice, once filled with youthful enthusiasm, became a vessel for a greater message. And just like that, the boy who once sang, "I Think I Love You," gave the world a different kind of anthem. One of reflection, urgency, and rediscovery. His parting words weren't an end, but a new beginning for many who needed to hear them. The legacy of David Cassidy has now taken on a life of its own, reshaped not by hits, but by the humanity he revealed when the music stopped. He reminded us that the final act isn't about how high we soared, about whether we truly connected, whether we dared to live fully, and whether we left behind more than just applause. Cassidy may be gone, but the message he delivered in those final breaths now lives in every choice we make. What will you do with the time that remains? And there you have it. David Cassidy's final hours weren't just the end of a music icon. They were a mirror into the quiet heartbreak of a life lived in the spotlight, and the silence that followed when the crowd faded. From teen heartthrob to a man battling his demons behind closed doors, Cassidy's story reminds us that fame doesn't protect you from pain, and that sometimes our most powerful truths are spoken in whispers, not on stage. He made millions smile with his songs, but in the end, it was his final words, "So much wasted time," that hit the hardest. It wasn't just a confession, it was a warning, plea to all of us not to let time slip away chasing the wrong things. So if David Cassidy's story moved you, take a second to drop a like. It helps more than you know. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Did you grow up watching the Partridge Family? Are you surprised by how it all ended? And hey, if you're into untold stories, forgotten icons, and the real truth behind Hollywood's glitter, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We've got some incredible stories coming up, including a shocking reveal about another 70s legend who walked away from fame without ever looking back. So don't miss that, because at the end of the day, these stories aren't just about celebrity, they're about all of us. Our regrets, our triumphs, and what we choose to do with the time we have. David Cassidy may be gone, but his message? That one's still echoing loud and clear, so let's make it count. And remember, don't wait for the spotlight to fade before you start living like a star. Catch you in the next one.